Give the gift of thoughtful conversation this holiday season with a membership to the Commonwealth Club.
Hello, and welcome to today's meeting of the Commonwealth Club of California. My name is Dr. Stephanie Cyr, Professor of Environmental and Energy Programs at the University of San Francisco and affiliate of the Energy and Environmental Technologies Division of Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory. And I will be your moderator for the program this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. It's my pleasure to extend a special welcome to any new club members who are watching and invite everyone to visit the club on the web at www.commonwealthclub.org. This evening's program is presented by the club's Asia Pacific Affairs member-led forum and is co-organized with the Consulate General of the Republic of Korea in San Francisco. It is my pleasure to introduce Consul General Sang-Soo Yoon, who will make welcoming remarks.
Good evening. It is my great pleasure to make remarks on the occasion of a webinar titled Climate Change, Technology and Innovation, Views from Korea and Japan. First of all, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Ian McGraw, Chair of the Commonwealth Club's Asia Pacific Affairs member-led forum, and Lilian Nagasawa, the Vice Chair and Coordinator of this program, for organizing today's important event. I also appreciate very much two panelists today, Dr. Sung-Woo Kim, the head of the Environment and Energy Research Institute of Kim En-jang in Korea, and Dr. Genji Yamaji, the president of Research Institute of Innovative Technology for the Earth, and the moderator, Dr. Stephanie Cyr, the professor of Environmental and Energy Program at the University of San Francisco, for joining us to have an insightful discussion today. And I also welcome all the audience who are watching this webinar. Distinguished guests, on the May 21st, the Korean President Moon Jae-in visited Washington, D.C. and had the summit meeting with the US President Joe Biden. Two leaders reaffirmed strong alliance between our two countries and agreed upon expanding our cooperation into the wide range of issues such as climate change, global health, emerging technologies, and global supply chain. As a follow-up of our two nations' commitment to strengthen our cooperation in response to climate change, we are holding today's webinar together with the Japanese representative. As you know, the Korea and Japan have a very similar economic structure and have the same challenge on how to decarbonize our economy to tackle global climate change issues. Korean and Japanese experts will present our own country's policy on how to achieve net zero by 2050, followed by the moderated discussion led by the American experts on climate change. At the COP26 summit in November, leaders around the world agreed to strengthen climate action to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius by the end of this century. The Korea, US, and Japan were among other advanced countries to ambitiously set the goal of going to carbon neutrality by 2050. As a technological advanced and innovative economies, I think three countries, including Korea, Japan, and United States, could work together to facilitate technology development and transfer to achieve this high goal of Paris Agreement. So against this background, I believe that today's webinar could be timely and useful because today's seminar could suggest some directions and guidelines for 3 countries to move forward in response to the climate change. Once again, I hope that today's webinar could provide policymakers from our country, our 3 countries, to opportunities learn the best practices of each country, and we can have a more coordination in this very important area of climate change issues. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Consul General Yoon. So we are delighted to have this event today on climate change, technology and innovation, views from Korea and Japan. As you just heard, both countries have recently made very significant pledges to climate neutrality. And this is notable because Korea and Japan are 2 of the most technologically advanced countries on the planet. And so we are very interested in how these countries are using their innovation expertise to address climate disruption. And since both Korea and Japan now have legally enshrined their commitments to the goal of net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050, in other words, carbon neutrality, now comes the challenge of achieving that goal. So we are fortunate this evening to hear from 2 experts from Korea and Japan on their climate policies and how the technology and innovation can help to rapidly cut greenhouse gas emissions now and ultimately carbon neutrality by the year 2050. So a note to our listening audience, we encourage questions from you, and we ask you to write your questions in the YouTube text chat window. And we will try to get to many of them as possible after the presentations from our speakers. So now it is my pleasure and privilege to have you join me in welcoming to the Commonwealth Club our speakers with us tonight. So first we will hear from Dr. Sun-Woo Kim from the Environment and Energy Research Institute of Kim and Chang from Seoul, Korea. And as you just heard, Dr. Kim is also part of the Korean Carbon Neutrality Committee under the presidential office, which was formed just this year. And after we hear from Dr. Kim, we will then turn to Dr. Kenji Yamaji, who is president of the Research Institute of Innovative Technology for the Earth, also known as RITE, from Tokyo, Japan. And Dr. Yamaji has been with RITE for many years as part of the Japanese government's Earth Regeneration Plan, the New Earth 21. And Dr. Yamaji has been involved with R&D on biorefinery technologies, integrated analysis on to mitigate global warming. So with that, again, audience, I invite you to put any questions in the YouTube text chat window. And now it's my pleasure to turn the microphone over to Dr. Sun-Woo Kim.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you so much for the kind introduction. Let me just share the screen to share the slide that I'm going to present. Stephanie, am I just doing the right sharing? Can you see my screen, my presentation though?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Let's see. Let's move on to the first page now. Okay, it's great pleasure and honor for me to speak at this timely event. And I would like to thank the Commonwealth Club and Consul General of the Republic of Korea in San Francisco for inviting me to be able to speak at the event. Well, as introduced, I'm leading the Environment and Energy Research Institute at Kim Hyen-jang, which is the biggest law firm in Korea, with dedicated teams of carbon neutrality, renewable energy, and ESG, which I belong to. So I'm an environment and energy expert in Korea. So I would like to share the Korean story from climate change policy and technology perspective. Well, the story begins with the declaration of carbon neutrality, which was made by President Moon last year, October, at the Congress speech. Was about a year ago. And it really changes a lot of following policies, relevant policies. Before the declaration, we had long-term low greenhouse gas emission development strategies. We also had the reduction target by 2030, greenhouse gas reduction target by 2030 called National Determined Contribution. But from the consequence of the carbon neutrality declaration by the president, Korea has revisited climate change policies to align with that carbon neutrality declaration. The first thing that we do, I would say, is the launching of Carbon Neutrality Committee, which I'm also sitting at. And we launched the committee to review the scenario and to review the reduction target and approve the scenario and target as well. So the committee consists of ministers of 18 ministries, so that's almost all ministers, and 77 the civilian experts. And a couple of months ago, we deliberated 2050 carbon neutrality scenario and 2030 greenhouse gas reduction target, which is called the NDC. And they are like this. Like for 2030, we decided to reduce emissions by 40% relative to 2018. And I want you to note that this enhanced target, enhanced NDC, reflects strong political will from Korean perspective, because the Korea's high manufacturing ratio of 20% of entire GDP. If you just compare that number with EU of 16%, US 11%, and Japan a little bit more than 20%. So it would be painful for us, more painful. And also this enhanced NDC target means short time frame between peak emissions and carbon neutrality of 32 years for Korea, whereas EU with 60 years, US with 43 years, Japan with 37 years. And also the high annual average reduction rate. To attain the target, we have to reduce every year more than 4%, whereas US and EU is a little bit more of 2%. So, I mean, it's a stretched target, but this is the target we set up and we are aiming for. And by strategies like expansion of renewable energy the ratio of 30% and the reduction target of 14.5% specific for the industry sector, and the deployment of the climate-friendly the vehicles like electric cars, etc. And also as I mentioned, we deliberated the carbon neutral scenarios. And the key contents are the scenarios show that to cease the core power generation with some compensation and to convert to renewable fuels and raw materials in manufacturing sectors like steel, cement, and chemicals. And also the supply, the carbon-free or pollution-free vehicles, and not to mention the production of green hydrogen, etc. As Stephanie just briefly mentioned, that I think one of the most important thing that you might find interesting is the Carbon Neutrality Framework Act, which was passed in September of this year. And so it will be enforced next year, March. And it states, we included the carbon neutrality target in that act. And we also included the minimum target to be achieved by 2030, which is called NDC also, as more than 35% compared to 2018. This enshrinement of carbon neutrality path and NDC into the act means that continuity of the policy and continuity of the political will regarding carbon neutrality from Korean perspective. And this act also includes the important measures like the implementation plan and the launching the committee and the sectoral measures and the climate fund as well as adaptation plan. As I said, the Korea has high ratio of manufacturing and industrial, the manufacturing, the portion, and we have grown pretty fast from economically and from the greenhouse gas emission wide. So if we want to attain the target of enhanced NDC, which was decided a couple of months ago, and to attain the carbon neutrality target, which was announced a year ago, I think this is like a target which is way stretched, as you can see from this graph. We have followed the path of a blue dot. I'm sorry, the black dots, but we have to suddenly change the direction and change that path into the blue arrow and purple arrow. So we need the drastic policies, and we need also innovative technologies. Let me just introduce the couple of policies that will drive this path change. First policy is for industry sector, Korea has implemented emission trading scheme since 2015. Excuse me. Korea is the second country which implements the emission trading scheme nationwide after EU. And as you know, the scheme is a scheme where the government allocates the greenhouse gas credits to companies, and it allows them to discharge within the credit, and the trade of the insufficient access credits. Now we are under third planning period, which is from 2021 to 2025. That's a 5-year period. And the period covers almost 700 companies. And surprisingly, it covers 73.5% of entire national emissions. So this is one of the key policy options that we have used and we will use to attain the goal. And the auction ratio has raised from 3% to 10%. And maybe for international audience, it might be interesting to find that the company may submit the carbon offsets limited to 5% of the total emission permits, including international offsets. And from the third planning period, that trading market participants will be expanded to financial institutions and individuals. The second policy, the second important policy that we have to note is the, of course, energy policy for energy sector to deploy renewable energy. According to fifth Renewable Energy Basic Plan, which is the legal plan under Ministry of Industry, which was announced last year, and end of last year, the 62 gigawatt of renewable energy increase expected by 2034. And if you just take a look at the left-hand side graph, it's a dramatic increase from only 18.5 as of now to 80 gigawatt within 15 years, actually 13 years. And for solar, 12 gigawatt from now to 50 gigawatt. For wind, 1.5 gigawatt from now to 25 gigawatt. And for renewable energy generation percentage, it also, solar will increase from 2% as of now to 10%, and wind from less than 1% to 10%. So I think this is sort of dramatic, the change, and the many industries, not only Ministry of Industry but also the Ministry of Environment, Minister of Ocean, and Minister of Land are collaborating to facilitate the licensing process and facilitating the development process, etc. And these are the emission trading scheme and the renewable energy deployment policies are the plan and policies that is implementing right now. But what we are expecting is these the plans were set up before the Carbon Neutrality Committee actually enhanced NDC target. So what we are expecting next year is we are expecting sixth next renewable energy basic plan update. And that will include like 100 gigawatts, about 100 gigawatts of the 100 gigawatts of renewable energy installment by 2030, and 30% of renewable energy power generation percentage by 2030. So it will be updated. And I think the one thing that you might want to note is Korea has introduced RE100 implementation policies just this year. So as you all know, the RE100 is voluntary initiative to use 100% renewable energy, and for Korean companies, it was not possible to buy. Say Samsung was not possible to buy renewable energy from the power generator until 2020, but from this year, actually Korean companies are able to buy or buy the power or buy the certificate or just pay the green pricing to declare the renewable energy, the 100% to the market. So we just also, the Korea also amended the Electricity Business Act a couple of months ago to allow direct the power purchase agreement between the Korean company and power generators. So I think it's very exciting time for Korean companies to sort of increase the usage of renewable energy, as well as the power producers to have the diverse sets of the buyers of renewable energy they produce. Well, these are the policies so far that I just explained, the policies to drive the carbon neutrality and to drive implement, enhance the nationally determined contribution, the target greenhouse gas reduction target by 2030. And the other, or if I may, important pillar is technological innovation to drive carbon neutrality. I was also at the beginning of this year, I was also sitting at this carbon neutrality, the technology committee, to select and elaborate 10 core technologies to drive the carbon neutrality. And we identified those 10 technologies based on the long-term development plan and sector analysis and contribution of the emission reductions, etc. So we identified solar, wind, hydrogen, and bioenergy, steel and cement, petrochemical, and the process innovation, and the carbon capture and usage, and storage, and transport efficiency and building efficiency. But for each technology, we set up the target for the innovation. For example, for solar, we are aiming for enhancing the efficiency of solar panel from, say, 27% as of now to 35% by 2030. And for wind, the one turbine capacity 5.5 megawatt as of now to 15 megawatt by 2030. And for hydrogen, we're gonna aim for cutting the price to half by 2030. And for steel cement, for steel industry, we're gonna apply the hydrogen reduction, the steel making method, steel making technology, which is the innovative and brand new technology by 2040, etc. So based on also the digitalization that the Korea is strong, we're gonna also use this technological innovation to drive the carbon neutrality and to attain the NDC. I think I will stop here, and it's very welcome. Any comments and questions, and I'm really excited to listen to the Japanese the status of the carbon neutrality and climate change policy. Thank you. Back to you, Stephanie.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Kim. So valuable to hear about the dramatic actions that Korea is undertaking in light of the severe threat we all face from climate disruption. So although challenging, it's necessary and very possible. So thank you. And with that, we'll hear next from Dr. Kenji Yamaji. And after that, we will take questions from the audience. So keep putting those questions in the chat. All right, to you, Dr. Yamaji.
Yes. Let me share my slide. Can you see my slides?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you very much. So thank you, Stephanie. I'm Kenji Yamaji, President and Director General of RITE. RITE stands for Research Institute of Innovative Technology for the Earth. And it's my pleasure to be given a chance to talk at a meeting of the Commonwealth Club of California. The theme of my talk is a policy, policies for climate change in Japan. And I'd like to explain briefly the scenario analysis for 2050 carbon neutrality done by RITE as well. Okay, as shown here, global energy-related carbon dioxide emissions was 33.5 billion tons in 2018. And Japan is here, but China and the United States are big emitters, but Japan is here, around 3% of the global total. And Korea is next to Japan. Okay, Japan declared October last year, 2050 carbon neutralities. And April this year, the former Prime Minister declared 2030 target, 46% reduction from 2013 level. And as Dr. Kim already said, South Korea also announced 2050 carbon neutrality and 2030 target 40% reduction from the level of 2018. And the 2030 target is so-called nationally determined contributions. So we have already reported that to the Secretary of the United Nations. Okay, so after the announcement of carbon neutrality and the NDC of 46% reduction, the Japanese government decided green growth strategy. In the green growth strategy, ambitious targets are considered as a great opportunity for further prosperity, aiming benefits to people's lives that beyond carbon dioxide emission reductions. So the government selected 14 important areas. Okay, but while saying such a beautiful word like a great opportunity or benefit to the people's life, we need concrete actions to realize such ambitious targets. So to support these 14 sectors innovations, we prepared several policy measures, including the budget in red, the Green Innovation Fund of 2 trillion yen was already set. And NEDO is a research funding organization of research and development in Japan, is starting several green innovation projects. These are listed here. And for example, some projects are already started. The others are in different stage of preparation. For example, so large-scale hydrogen supply chain establishment or hydrogen production from the water electrolysis. It is already started. And we are now moving such many green projects, green innovation projects. Okay, next slide. The finance policy is also very important. While EU has been developing green finance rules such as EU taxonomy, Japan is promoting both transition and the goal. Okay, so we are since not all industry can decarbonize in a single step, so it is important to carefully promote both transition and the final green economy. So we are promoting transition finance and also green finance. Okay, so in this last October 22nd, government decided 6 strategic energy plan. Strategic energy plan is a policy basis of Japan's energy, and it is updated every 3 to 4 years. And this is the latest one. And okay, the slide shows the outlines, but so please focus on the second bullet. Okay, so the basic principle for the Japanese energy policy is so-called S+3Es. S means the safety. So on the major premise of safety, effort will be made for energy security and economic efficiency and environmental protection, particularly climate change issues. So even under these very ambitious targets, we keep the balance of energy policy principles. So this is the numbers stated in 6 strategic energy plan for 2030. Okay, first, energy conservation is very important. This line shows the changes from previous strategic energy plan to the new strategic energy plan. This is the numbers for new strategic energy plan. So we increase the energy conservation 46 million kiloliter oil equivalent. This is a reduction from the baseline. And the baseline energy demand also reduced from 377 to 350. And from 350, we reduce energy consumption 60 million kiloliter oil equivalent. And then power generation mix is very important. So the renewable powers in the previous energy mix is a 20 to 24%, but the new one from 36 to 38%. It is the most major category of power generation. And nuclear power, we maintain the previous planned share, 20 to 22% for 2030. And new one is hydrogen ammonia power generation. 1% is increased, and it will be increased the share up to the 2050. And fossil fuel power generation is reduced. And with this, and plus non-energy related gas and sinks, we plan to achieve the 46% reductions. And from now, let me briefly introduce Light's 2050 carbon neutrality scenarios done by Light. It is the image. Okay, first we need energy savings. And then we employ non-fossil energies from nuclear, domestic renewables. Domestic renewables can be used in the form of ammonia or hydrogen. We also use some overseas renewables, or rather green hydrogen or synthetic fuels. And also we all use overseas carbon dioxide reservoirs to making the blue hydrogen imported to Japan to use. And fossil fuels will be used in 2050, but with CCS that can be emissionized and using domestic CO2 storage capacity, and also overseas storage capacities. And so remaining fossil fuels without CCS, that can be offset by bioenergy with CCS or direct air capture with CCS or forestation and mineralization. Those are negative emission technologies. Okay, so it's busy, so I just skip, but we have reference cases for carbon neutrality in 2050. So the globally carbon neutral in 2050 also, but for the United States, Japan, and Europe, they are regionally, respectively, achieved the carbon neutralities. Okay, so this is a reference case. In addition to reference case, we set 6 cases. This is renewable energy, electricity 100%. This is renewable energy innovations. This is nuclear power utilization increase because this is a model. So nuclear power is not only a techno-economics problem, but it's a socio-political problem. So the nuclear power share in the electric generation, in reference case, we set the upper limit of the nuclear share as 10%. But in this case, it is lifted to the 20%. So hydrogen innovation, CCUS innovation, and demand transformations. Okay, so there is no remaining time. I like to skip one, but major assumptions for these cases listed here. And this is the resultant optimal solutions, renewable energy generations share. In the reference case, it is the 54%. Okay. And this is, okay, it's a bit complicated because of the variable renewable energies, such as wind power or solar photovoltaics. They need additional costs to match the electricity supply and demand. So the cost is so-called integration cost for grid measures. So that is increased by the, according to the introduced share of such variable renewable energy, electricity. So the pink is solar photovoltaic case, and the wind is wind power cases. But this is not our model. It is introduced borrowing from other researchers' results. Okay, so this is the results. It is the optimized results to attain the goal with minimum cost. So this is the existing data, the 2015, and this is a reference case in electricity supply in Japan in 2050. So it is coal with CCS, it is gas with CCS, and this is biomass, and this is, excuse me, this means, okay. And this one, this color is, how to say, it's a reddish brown, is a nuclear. And then wind and solar, and this is ammonia and hydrogen. And upper part is off-grid solar PV. And so with this configuration of electricity generation, we can achieve the carbon neutrality in 2050. And in the case of renewable energy electricity 100%, the production of electricity itself is reduced, and all new renewables. But the new one is this one. This is a bioenergy power generation, but with CCS. That means negative emissions. The renewable energy innovations, renewable energy increase. If the nuclear upper limit is uprated to the 20% is used. And the hydrogen innovations, hydrogen ammonia use increase. And CCUS innovation, CCS utilized in fossil fuels. And digital demand transformation, no specific changes. It is the final energy consumption in 2050. And this is again, it is a real data for 2015. in the reference cases, okay, in all cases, energy demand decreased substantially. But this yellow part is electricity. Electricity demand remains or rather increase. But as I said for previous slide, in the case of renewable energy 100%, electricity use is rather reduced because of with the renewable energy 100% electricity getting costly. So the electrification is reduced. Other cases, final energy consumption is almost the same. And this is the carbon dioxide balances in Japan in 2050. In all cases, this is the direct air capture. And this is the CO2 capture from the fossil fuel power plants. And in case of the renewable 100%, this is the BECCS bioenergy with CCS. And the recovered carbon dioxide, some are used, but mostly injected underground. Yellow is domestic reservoirs, and this one is overseas reservoirs utilization. And the cost here, okay. So the reference cost case is in $1 billion per year. It's a huge amount of energy system cost for 2050. But in renewable 100%, the cost increase further, $100 billion US. In other cases, costs are rather reduced compared to the reference case. And this is the image of the cost. So for the optimal solutions, options are adopted from the less costly measures. So this area is cost, but that is the most highest cost to realize the target is a marginal abatement cost. We call it MAC. It's not a hamburger, but it's a marginal abatement cost, very important index. And the MAC in Japan in 2050 is around $500 per ton CO2. It's very expensive in all cases. But compared with other areas of the world, mostly less than $200, except for EU. But Japan is very high. That is because renewable energy potential and also CO2 storage capacity is not so large in Japan. So it is very important for Japan to achieve the carbon neutrality goal in cooperation with other regions. And this is the implications of scenario analysis results. I like to stop here, but let me read the point. Various measures such as energy conservation, renewables, nuclear, CCUS, hydrogen, ammonia, and negative emission technology are mobilized to realize carbon neutrality. And nuclear is used to the upper constraint in the optimal solutions. And the electrification and decarbonization of electricity are commonly required in all scenarios of carbon neutrality. While costs of electricity increase, electricity of 100 renewables further increase the cost, thus suppress the electrification of final demand in optimal solution. And hydrogen and zero emission synfuels are used in non-electric demand sectors, and negative emission technology are used to offset the emission from the hard to abate sectors to realize the carbon neutrality. And direct air capture, that is capture of CO2 in the air, is commonly used in all scenarios to realize carbon neutrality. And scale of the use of converted carbon dioxide is limited. Mostly storage is used. And the super smart society promotes circular and sharing economies. That is leading to the very negative cost reduction of carbon dioxide. It is very important, I think. The last slide I like to skip for the time's sake. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Yamaji. Thank you for giving us such rich detail on Japan's plans to meet these really challenging targets. So now for this portion of the program, we'll have some dialogue with our speakers, and I'll also keep an eye out for questions from the audience. Yeah, so for both Korea and Japan, from your presentations, it's really striking because both countries rely on fossil fuels for over 85% of their energy at present. So we are looking at dramatic changes, and we see, because oil is a dominant energy supply, we see these efforts to substitute for oil, right? Looking at hydrogen, looking at ammonia, looking at electrification of transportation. But as we electrify, right, then we need to make that electricity more renewable. I think it's also striking, both Korea and Japan have such important manufacturing sectors. And I really appreciate that both of you highlighted, our number one strategy is to first reduce demand so that these alternative energy sources can be sufficient. So I'd like to put out the first question and then turn to the audience. So again, considering that kind of our first strategy is to reduce demand, so that the constraints on energy supply can be honored, could you each just talk a little bit more about one example of an important demand side strategy that you see some progress happening? Some sort of resource conservation or restructuring, or even cultural shifts in consumption. Could we start with Dr. Kim and then hear from Dr. Yamaji?
Yes, thank you, Stephanie, for a fantastic question. I think it's, when we talk about the carbon neutrality and the NDCs, we usually focus on supply side. So I think it's really I think good to touch on demand side to balance the conversation. Well, as you know, that from Korea's perspective, the control or constrain the demand side is not from just one policy. There are several policies to constrain the demand, and we just started, and we don't have a long history of the demand control, but we just started to focus on the demand by introducing demand response. The promise, the power controller, our power suppliers are sort of promising with the power consumers in advance so that they can sort of cut the peak. And we have implemented demand response, and we will expand that demand response to more. And second policy that we are also considering is the revisit the rationality of the electricity price. So price controls a lot. So it's not easy for policymakers to raise the power price all of a sudden, but it's very complicated, the mechanism. But we all agree that without just price control, it's really hard to constrain the demand. So we know it, and so we are looking at it. And third, we also considering the virtual the power supply, virtual power plant. So we not only just building up the rear power plant, you saving the money. It's similar to demand response, but you're saving the energy and electricity. Then you can actually sell those saved amount of electricity to the power market. And lastly, we also considering the recycling the resource materials, so that we can reduce the new consumption of the energy. I mean, those are the policy options that we are considering right now. So it's all together. I think those are the options that we can achieve the demand constraint.
Great, thank you so much. Good to hear about the many options, from pricing changes, selling megawatts, the virtual power plant, and more. All right, let's hear from Dr. Yamaji about those demand side strategies, and then we'll get another question.
Okay, thank you very much. And the demand side is very important. So now we are changing stage from now, we simply reduce the energy demand. But from now, we need some demand flexibility to adjust the variable renewable energy power production of such kind, or promoting electrification. Because of the cost of electricity going down, hopefully, then not just to save the electricity is not a good idea, but to import more, carbon-free electricity introduction, promote carbon-free electricity introduction, as Dr. Kim said. And for the long term, it is more important demand side. As I briefly mentioned by introducing the scenario analysis done by Wright. So demand transformation is a very promising idea. So by digital transformation of the society, we can promote new economies like a circular economy or sharing economy. We can reduce energy demand. Also, we can reduce the material demand by sharing cars. We don't need so many cars right now. We can share the cars. So such a very good idea, just promote by green by digitalization. Of course, on the basis of that, we need the green of digitalization. So that is my short answer to your question.
All right, thank you so much. We are getting close to the end of our program, so we have time just for one more question. There are many good ones in the chat about nuclear waste, about global trade. I'd like to pick up on this idea of really rethinking economic structure and really thinking about a circular economy, meaning we have to live within the means of the planet. So with that in mind, let's take this audience question about perhaps some of the effects on global trade in getting to carbon neutrality. I know you focused on what each country is doing, but in terms of revamping your industrial sectors, your manufacturing, and the effects of global trade, could you mention something in your each country's strategies, Dr. Kim?
Yeah, I think that audience picked the critical point of trade, sort of the linkage between carbon content and trade. I think that this year is the first year that international society has faced actual signal the possible linkage between the carbon contents and the trade, if you like. For example, EU, European Union, this year, July 14th, they announced that the draft of CBAM, which is the cross-border adjustment mechanism by carbon contents. If you just if Korean or Japanese steel maker want to export the steel to European Union, then if the Korean and Japanese steel producers producers steel contains more carbon than European producers, then we will be pay some price according to European emission trading schemes, the carbon price, which is skyrocketing recently up to 80 euros, 90 euro per year per ton. And also not only the EU itself, at the end of November, the EU and US agreed upon the lift of all the trade sanction on aluminum and steel, with just one exception. They decided to consider the impose of the carbon border adjustment for the steel and aluminum, although they lift all the trade sanctions related to the steel and aluminum. It means that now the world is toward the international society is toward the pricing the carbon across the border. So from the Korean and Japanese perspective, we're aware of that. And now we are also considering that factor into our domestic policies. So this is the first year that we are considering that new movement, and we will try to incorporate that movement into our domestic emission trading policy and our domestic the anti-dumping the policies and the trade policies, etc. So this is first year that we recognize and try to reflect that into our domestic policies.
Thank you. That's a really significant move internationally. Dr. Yamaji.
Oh, thank you. The trade is very important. So every country and region has comparative advantage. So just to exchange the products or service that was made by using comparative advantage. So that is the basis of the benefit of trade. So that means open, not close, that's the basis. And in case of the climate change issues, I touch upon a bit different perspectives. In this last COP26, we have finalized the rule book of Paris Accord. The last piece is Article 6, is using market mechanism. So we can exchange credit of the carbon dioxide emissions. So it is important. Of course, the rule is very important, just to avoid the double counting, such kind of thing is very important. But a trade of credit is important among countries, among regions, or even in the same countries. We can exchange, as Dr. Kim mentioned, each company, different company can exchange credit. It is important. It is also important internationally, I think.
Thank you very much. Well, already we have reached the end of our program. So I just want to close by thanking our speakers, Dr. Sunwoo Kim of the Environment and Energy Research Institute of Kim and Chang, and Dr. Kenji Yamaji of the Research Institute of Innovative Technology for the Earth.
Right.
We also thank the Consulate General of the Republic of Korea in San Francisco, as well as our audience for being with us today and your questions, even though we couldn't get to all of them, and also for everyone watching the recording. Soon this program and others from the Commonwealth Club will be made available on the club's website. I want to wish both of our speakers and Korea and Japan every success in your innovation and you're developing the technologies that can help even the larger emitters race toward our common goal of protecting the planet, our common goal of carbon neutrality. And now this meeting of the Commonwealth Club of California, commemorating its 118th year of enlightened discussion, is adjourned.